Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our webinar, Developing Smart Agents for Dynamics 365 and Beyond. I'm Joy, and I will be moderating today. And presenting today is Chad Williams, who is our CTO here at Innovia. Before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute, so if you do have any questions during the webinar, please send those through the Q&A option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will be sending out the recording later this week, so please keep an eye out for that email. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Chad.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. As Joy said, I'm Chad Williams. Hopefully, I saw some of you at our customer conference, and I'm honored that you are back to see this again. And for those of you that catching this for the first time, I hope to catch you at our customer conference next year. So, again, as Joy said, I'm Chad Williams, CTO here at Innovia. My contact information, I'll bring that up at the end again, and you can always catch the recording. Um, I've been with Anovia for 22 years. I've spent time in many different roles here, but always kind of stayed close to the tech side, being a developer at heart. And so today I'm excited to talk to you about agents, and I'm actually going to do a demo and walk through and show you how to build one. So with that, we're going to dive right into agenda here. So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to what agents are, talk about some of the tools that are available out there, and then get right, like I said, into a demo. I have maybe 4 or 5 slides here, so I am not one to spend any time in PowerPoint. So I'm going to do a live demo. So fingers crossed. Hopefully everything works out here. But we'll go through that, and then we'll circle back here and talk a little bit about the current landscape and wrap us up. And we'll see if we have any questions. Um, so again, first of all, start off with just an intro to what agents are. So I'm going to first pop open bring you over to Microsoft 365 Copilot. So rather than trying to explain to you what they are, I'm actually going to just show you examples of some simple ones. But in case you really want a definition, so you can take on after this, an agent is really just a specialized AI tool that is going to do something for us. It might get some information or perform a task. And so hopefully you can see my screen here, Microsoft 365 Copilot. Um, so first say, hopefully you all are familiar with this, but if you're not, and maybe your organization is kind of early in the AI journey, come talk to us about this. This is a great place to start. Great place to kind of kick off some adoption within your organization. And of course, the licensing for this is what you'll need to do what I'm showing, we'll be showing today. So, um, yeah, so let me show you here. So, if you're familiar again with this, this is kind of that chat experience. If you haven't seen it, it looks kind of like Chat GTP, where you're going to have your, prompt and you're going to ask it questions and it surfaces information for you. But also over in here, whether you've noticed or not, is you have these agents. And so if I just click on Explore Agents here, you can see examples of some agents that have been built. Microsoft has a few out here, so they have one called a prompt coach. So this is kind of an interesting one here, and I call it out because I'll reference it later on. But it turns out, if you've done any with ChatGPT or any searching querying with AI, you probably learned very early on that the prompt is very important. How you ask it, what you ask it, how you word it can give you very different results. And so it turns out that, these AI models are actually very good at helping tell you how to ask itself questions, if that makes sense. So that's what that is. And so that's an example of an agent. It has a very specific purpose. It has some knowledge that it utilizes to achieve that, and you'll see others as I scroll down. So there are a few from Microsoft, many from other third parties. You can create your own right from here. I'll come back to that. But again, all of these are going to be relatively simple agents. Here's another one from Microsoft just to help give you ideas. So to help kind of kick off a brainstorming session. Um, that you might be having. So again, these are all going to be examples of the first type of agent that I'll show you here in a minute. That's called a prompt response. And these are all built within Microsoft 365 Copilot. So pull up the PowerPoint one more time here. Um, so that's just kind of a quick overview of what an agent is and show you a couple examples. I'm going to build one here for you today, so you should have a pretty clear idea when we're done if you're still a little confused. So there are kind of three basic types of agents. Most of those on the screen, actually all of those on the screen that I just showed you are going to be examples of this first one that I said, this prompt response. And as you work down this list, they get more complicated and sophisticated in what they can do. Um, so these prompt response, as you've seen, if you've done any interaction with it, it's just like when you interact with M365 Copilot or ChatGPT, you're going to ask it questions and it's going to give you information based on whatever information it has available. Now, with agents, you can point it to very specific information. So maybe a legal document. I've done examples pointed to Microsoft licensing documents to help answer questions in the context of what's in that document. Maybe you build one built on top of a folder in SharePoint that has a bunch of files for a project maybe that you're doing with us or with a customer of your own, and have an agent that you could ask questions. So those are just a couple of simple examples of like a prompt response. But as you take that one step down, then you hit what's called a task agent. So a task agent is, as the name suggests, is going to do something. So it's going to automate a specific task or duty that you give it. And then finally, this idea of autonomous agents. So it's letting that agent do something on its own, not totally rogue, just whenever it wants, but within the confines of how you define it. So it might be that it's going to perform that task on a specified schedule that you give it, or when some event happens, a invoice is posted in Business Central, a record is created, or just a couple of examples there. So those are your types of agents. And so now when we look at, well, how do we build them? There's really three tools that Microsoft has out there. So the first on your left here is Agent Builder, which is where I was just in. That's within Microsoft 365 Copilot. I'll show you after I'm done with the slide here how you can create it there. In the middle, we have Copilot Studio. This is going to be the focus for the demo today. This is really the kind of the middle tool here in terms of sophistication. So the idea here is on your left side, you're just going to describe what it's doing. You're not writing any code. You're not going to have to look at any code, and it's built, designed for end users. Then here with Copilot Studio in the middle, the idea is, for makers, as Microsoft calls them, folks that have it could be end users. Certainly anybody who's worked in Power Automate or Power Apps is going to see a lot of similarities and have no trouble here. Really still no code to be messing around with, and can still work and describe things in natural language as you go through and build stuff. And then on the right side is for those tech folks, the developers out there using Azure AI Foundry, Visual Studio, and GitHub. So, the idea here is you can really start anywhere on this chart here, and you can move up as you want. So if you built something in Agent Builder, I believe Microsoft has released it now, or it might be in preview. The idea would be you can then take that agent and do things further within Copilot Studio, because as you work from left to right, at the agent builder level, you're going to have access to maybe 4 or 5 aspects of an agent. And then when you get to Copilot Studio, you might have access to, 8 or so aspects of what it takes to build an agent. And then on the far right, you're going to be able to really fine tune and control everything. So, but for most things that I think many folks are going to be doing, Copilot Studio is going to be the place to be, especially if you're going to do anything where you want to get into those other types of like a task or certainly an autonomous agent. Agent Builder is really just going to be for your prompt response type agents. So with that, as I promised, I wasn't going to spend too much time in there. So I'm going to jump right into the demo. So I'm going to pick up where we left off here in M365 Copilot. I showed you where you could explore these agents, but what I wanted to just stop here at before I jump to full Copilot Studio is that within here, this is really that agent builder experience. Still titled Copilot Studio, but it's much simpler in terms of what you can do and build here, and it's very easy to use. So you can start from a template. You can just start typing in and describing what you want your agent to do. And as you do that, over on the right, you'll see it build. I'm not going to go through this because I want to focus in the full Copilot Studio, but just wanted to show you here that you can build those right from here. Um, so you can describe these again using natural language, or you can actually step in and configure the different aspects of the agent. So like I said a few minutes ago, there are 4 or 5 aspects of an agent you can tailor here. Mainly its name, description, something called instructions that defines what it should be doing, and then giving it knowledge. So again, if I had a complex PDF document, that I wanted to be able to have an agent that might answer questions from that, I could point it to that document and get started here pretty quickly. And over on the right, again, as I said, you'll see it kind of build as you go. So that's that far left for, really end users, gets you can do some really cool things in there. So don't think of it as just, super simple, don't use it. Um, but again, if you want to jump into doing things with tasks and a little bit more than just kind of basic, really Copilot Studio is where you want to be. And so that's where we're going to spend the rest of our time here. So this is Microsoft Copilot Studio. Copilotstudio.microsoft.com will get you there. This you will have access to with your Microsoft 365 Copilot license. The design surface here, or the working surface, is going to look, very similar to many of Microsoft M365 apps nowadays. Over here on the left, you got your toolbar, home, create, etc. On this home screen, you kind of have, a highlight of everything, most of the things you're going to be able to do in here. Right up here at the top, I can jump into it, and just like in Agent Builder, I can just start describing what I want to do, and I can actually let it build one for me. So it's kind of odd to think of this way, but it just, I think, helps further help you think about what an agent is that, really what is behind this is in a way, it's an agent that helps you build agents. So it's like I said, it's a little weird to think about, but in many ways, it's just an agent that has a very specific task of utilizing AI to help build agents within this platform. So I scroll down, I see a recent agent. So I actually have the agent I built live back at our customer conference just about two months ago to the day, or 3 months ago to the day, excuse me. Got some other test ones that I've been working on. I can explore agents. I can see some templates that they've got out here. And then down at the bottom, I have some learning resources and different things that I can get to real quick. So it's nice that they put that right here, so you're not searching around looking for information. And there's a lot of good content in there. Back up to the toolbar, I'm just going to touch on 2 of these other tabs. The Create tab, and here's where I can create a new agent as well. And then I have my agents, or my templates. And I just to kind of talk on these a little bit further, these can be handy even if it's not an exact match to what you're thinking about. Starting with a template can kind of help you see what it builds, and then you can kind of decide what you might need to replace or move. And it just helps, kind of helps understand some of the inner workings again of how you might put it together um, by having, something to start with. So, and then finally here, agents, here I can see the agents that I've already built, and I can create new ones. I'm not going to touch on these other tabs today in the interest of time. Really the focus here now is going to be jump into creating a new agent and kind of walking you through that process. So I'm going to do that right from here and hit new agent. Excuse me. And kind of same with within M365 Copilot, when I went to build the agent there again, it's prompting me to help me, right? So it wants to, it allows me to just describe in natural language if I want what my agent should do, what its purpose might be, et cetera. And so can certainly do that. And this will also get a good start. And you can kind of see how does it put the things together? What did it build? Some things may not make any sense and why I did it, and you may just delete it, or and other things may help you along. I don't actually want to use this today because I want to. The point of this is to actually show you all the pieces and build it together. So up here in the upper right, I'm actually just going to click skip to configure. And so let me just grab something over on my other screen here. Um, so this is the start here. So I'm just going to give my agent a name. And so I'm just going to call this something called billing contract agent. I'll explain a little bit more about why I have chosen that. I've got a description here that I've already written that I want to give it. So this agent is just simply going to provide information about something called billing contracts in BC or Business Central. I can give it instructions. I'm going to skip that for now. Give it some starter prompts or point it to any knowledge sources. I'm going to skip all of that for now. I'll go through those pieces. Just going to hit create. So it's setting up. Again, this is all live and usually goes along pretty quick, but until you have an audience, you never know, right? So, okay, so here's the design surface, if you will, for the agent. Still have our tabs over on the left. Across the right, we have our different pages here, and you'll see these pages tabs pretty much match what you have on the overview. So you have your knowledge, tools down here. We have triggers, topics, etc. So not everything, but you're kind of going to see, across the top where you can dive into each one, or in this overview, you're going to be able to see most of the different aspects. And so, unlike back when I was in M365 Copilot, there's some similarity here. So you probably noticed instructions and knowledge right away, but there's others. So I have instructions, knowledge, but now I have something I can control, web search. I have tools, triggers, other agents. So agents can actually interact with each other, etc. So just going to talk a little bit here. So the first thing I want to do actually is there's this concept here of orchestration. And rather than trying to explain it to you right now what that means, I'm actually going to turn this off. And then as I go through and build this agent, I can show you what it does without it. And then when we turn it back on, you'll see quite frankly, the drastic difference of what actually allowing generative AI kind of take control of my agent does. The instructions, I'm going to also come back to this later. It'll be easier to explain it when it's time to drop in those instructions. Knowledge, so kind of as I showed in the M365, so knowledge is typically going to be a file, might be a SharePoint folder, OneDrive. There are a few connectors out there that exist, not a ton, so I couldn't, not without a lot of extra dev work, I couldn't add Business Central directly this way. I'll show you how I can actually get Business Central data into my agent. But this is just one way you can get knowledge into your agent. The next thing is this concept of tools. And so I kind of mentioned this a bit ago, but as we go through this, it's certainly anybody who's worked within Power Platform and built a flow, you're going to see a lot of similarities. The tools, the triggers, the connectors, the different things that you use within Power Automate are all, for the most part, in here. So when you think of a tool, a tool might be something that's going to perform a task, let's say send an email. It might be something that reads an email. It might get information out of an email. It might query a database. It might pull a record from Business Central. So a tool can also be knowledge. So I can have it get data, for example, from Business Central, and that's what we will do here in a minute. Then I want to talk about triggers here quick. So triggers are kind of what gives your agent that ability to be autonomous. So when does it run? When does it do whatever you've told it to do? And again, that can be something as simple as on a schedule, or more complicated, like when a record is created or something like that. So I will actually go through that. So I'll dive into it deeper. Then finally, we have agents here. So again, agents can work with other agents. So the idea is you want to keep your agent specific. And so don't try to make it do a whole bunch of different things. It'll really frustrate you and it gets really complicated really fast. And so you're better off building individual agents that perform each specific task, and then you can have, your agents kind of pass the torch, if you will, to whoever needs to do the right task. Then down at the bottom, you have topics and starter prompts or suggested prompts. These kind of fall more in that prompt response type agent category. I'm not going to utilize these today, but these concepts, they were in here as well, are pretty basic. So I'm going to skip over those. They're not going to be needed for what I want to show you today. All right. So enough of an overview of what we have here. So let's start adding some stuff to this. So first I'm going to do is I'm going to add a tool to this. And as I said, this is going to look a lot like what you see in Power Automate. So I'm just going to search for Business Central. And if my search is being friendly, I will find a bunch of, kind of a bunch of stuff. So Business Central connector. So if you've done anything in Power Automate with Business Central, you'll see the same actions exist here. So the one I want to utilize here is the find records. So it's going to connect me, and I'm going to jump into add and configure. It's coming up here. Okay, so there's not a ton to configure on here. As with everything you'll find, you're going to have a name and description, and it is helpful to actually give it meaningful names. It does help it as we get further on. This kind of ties back into that orchestration setting that I turned off, but giving it names that it understands and can determine like, oh, should I use that or this is helpful. So I'm going to give it a name there called Get Billing Contracts, and then a description called Retrieve Billing Contracts from Business Central. So before I go any further, let me tell you about what I have in Business Central. So I have a demo Business Central environment here. I've added a small modification to it, or the framework of a modification similar to one we actually have in our system, where we are working with subscriptions and billing contracts with our customers in Microsoft. And so many of those billing contracts will have a time frame when they need to be invoiced. And so just have a simple concept here of a table of a billing contract, excuse me. It's a number description. There's a customer tied to it. Has next day, the invoice date, and then a simple status on it. So this is the environment I'm actually going to interact with. I have already built a custom API to pull this data out. I would love to show you that, but that's a whole nother topic. It's not very complex. I'm fairly certain we've already got probably a webinar out there on it. But I am going to be utilizing that to pull this data out. Okay, so I'm going to bounce back to Copilot Studio here. Again, I've entered my name. I've got my description in here already. And so I just have 4 parameters I need to set up. So I have to tell it what environment the company, so I have to basically connect it to my environment that I have. It is possible to just let AI fill this stuff in and it'll determine it. In this case, for this, I don't want to do it. You'll see here in a bit where I'm going to actually let let AI determine how to best fill in those values. So I'm going to select a custom value here, and it's going to populate with what it sees in my tenant because I'm logged in and authenticated in the same tenant as this demo environment. So I have my sandbox here, select my company, Kronos, and my API connector, which points it to my custom API, which is this one. And then finally, the actual table that I'm going to be working with, which is this billing contracts API table that I built. And that's it. So that gives it the information to connect and just a name and description. There's really nothing else that I need. So I'm going to hit save on that. Okay, and let's say, so I'm just going to return back to this overview. And so I haven't really talked too much about what's going on the right here. So this is where you can test your agent as you move along. And I really suggest you build this in pieces. So build a piece, test it, build the next piece, test it, and just kind of walk through it. And that's what I'm going to do with you today. So over here, you really have this prompt surface to ask it questions and see how it's working. So I've given it a connection to Business Central. I've told it which data it can get. So it certainly can't get customer data or vendor data, item data. It's only going to have available what I told it it has, which were those billing contracts. Let's see if I can ask it um, a question here. So I just have a question here. I'm going to paste in, make it quick. So how many billing contracts are in Business Central? And let's see if it has any idea. So it's thinking, and it's always interesting. So it doesn't actually know yet. Um, it actually, what it did here is it gave me just a kind of made up answer, to be honest. From what it knows, it's general knowledge from what it has, what the model has, what it has from searching the web. And so it's not utilizing the tool I've given it. And so here's where I want to come back to that orchestration. So that is, again, without orchestration, without using generative AI to kind of determine how to, basically, it allows it to make decisions on how to use the different things you've given it to use. So certainly I've given it this tool to get billing contracts, but I haven't given it kind of the ability to think for its own a little bit and determine whether to use that. So I'm going to enable that. And then I'm just going to do that same search again. And what you're going to see is really no change. It did pop open something over here, but it's not really doing anything. And it gave me the same answer. So I did that on purpose because I wanted to show when you're testing this and as you're making changes and running through this, there is a refresh or to kind of restart your conversation up here. And so if you don't do this, it's going to kind of utilize some of this history in your chat with it as well, the same as you would see in M365 Copilot. So I'm actually going to clear that and start over so that it's not referencing that over again. So now if I ask it, I should see something happening over here. So this activity map is kind of showing me its thought process to some extent at a high level. So I can see it's utilizing my connector and it's subsending. So if I come back over here, the first time you run this, you're going to have to allow it permission to do it. So I'm going to hit allow. And so now it actually completed. And it says there are 5 billing contracts in Business Central. And if I kind of scroll through here, I can see kind of some, not to show you code, but can see some of the JSON output that it found. So it did actually find my contracts, and to just prove it to you if my toolbar gets out of the way. Yeah, so we had 5 of them in here. So let's take this a little bit further here. Let's see if it can figure out, so how many of them have an invoice date of today? And it's going to think, and it's going to knowledge sources. And okay, now again, it's giving me kind of an odd answer. It looks like it's kind of using a general web search, general information. So that is also a setting that we have back here on this knowledge. So by default, this web search is enabled. So in some cases you will want this on, but in this case, I don't want it to go search the web for anything. I don't want it to go figure out. I want it to use this information and this information alone to do what it needs to do. Again, think of these agents as having a very specialized purpose and focus. And so I don't want it to do this. So I'm going to actually disable that. And again, we'll clear our conversation, and I'll ask it to see if it knows. And so here I've not even mentioned Business Central. And let's see. And so it kind of gives me a a bad answer. So and this is kind of the nature of agents. They're going to do different things. You're not always going to get the same output. So when I've tested this before, sometimes it gives me the answer, sometimes it doesn't. But because I've cleared that that history, I'd either need to be more specific, or if I kind of start over and do my other prompt first, my other question, and what's going on? Let's live demo is acting weird. Let's try that again. So I'm gonna go back and ask it how many contracts are in Business Central, and it is not. Oh, I forgot to enable that. Sorry. Or did that get disabled on me? I must have hit something there. So that's why that stopped working on us. Live demos. So clear that, try one more time. Okay, so now it's thinking again, and it's using our Business Central connector. Okay, so back to where we were. So we've got 5 contracts. And again, you just have to kind of be patient sometimes when you're testing these. Um, Make sure you get back to square one as you build these tests, because if you don't, you might think you're going down the left path and you should be going down the right path, right? So I'm going to actually run through that full test again. So now I'm going to see, okay, how many are in there? So how many have an invoice date of today? And I can see it queried Business Central, and it says there are 2. Okay. Please list those 2 for me. So let's see if it can actually show me the contracts. Okay. And so it shows me the 2. So these were the 2 that we had in there with today's date on it. So, okay, so far so good. It looks like it's able to get information out. It's able to orchestrate and do what it needs to do when it needs to do it. And it's not going to go and just search general information on Business Central on me. So now what I want to do is I'm actually going to go and add another tool here. And in this instance, I want to give it the ability to send an email. So I'm going to select Outlook and send email V2. Again, this will be the exact same thing you would be doing in Power Automate if you were sending an email this way. So we're adding that, and it is configuring. Okay, and then it's going to bring me again to the kind of the same thing that we saw with the BC connector, or the BC tool to get the billing contracts. Is it's going to have a few things for me to fill in, mainly a name and description. So I am going to give it, again, a meaningful name, a little bit more meaningful name than that. And then actually on this one, I'm going to leave the description blank, or the default, excuse me. And then down here where I can specify my inputs again, rather than as I did on the Business Central find records, I gave it the fields values that I wanted. Here, I don't. I want to allow it to, figure out how to fill in who the email should go to, what the subject should be, and what the body should be. So let me go ahead and save that. Okay, and so now I'm going to come back to my prompt. I'm not going to clear anything because everything's good so far. And hopefully I can just ask it, please email those to me. And let's see. Okay, so it looks like it's trying to use my new tool that I gave it. So I'm going to allow it permission to do so. And you kind of just have to do this once after you add it. And it's working here. You can see in progress. Click the button. Oh, there it goes. I guess there we go. Okay, so let's see if it did anything. Oh, and so here it just sent. It's 11:35, just 11:35, so 11:34. And so, oh, this is a really nice email. So it sent me, so it was able to email them to me. So I haven't told it how to format or clean it up, which is something you do have to do. And so it sent it. It's interesting again, because as you test this and go through this, and I'll show you an example when I get all the way through this, kind of each time you just don't know what you're going to get. I don't mean to make it sound bad, right? But it just means you have to test, and you do have to be specific with it again about what you need it to be specific with, or exact with, I should say. Um, okay, so at this point now, so before I added the Outlook connector, I kind of really just still had a prompt response agent. But now with adding this action, it's now performing a task. It is, albeit simple, but it can send me an email. So now I've kind of, again, worked down that list that I showed you on the slide earlier down to a task agent. And so let's now take the last step and actually make this autonomous. So what I'm going to do now is go back to overview and scroll down to my triggers. Hit add trigger. And as I've said a few times, I'll say it again, you're going to see many of the same triggers that you would see in Power Automate. So you can kind of, if you may think about what's possible in Power Automate, the connections, the tools, the triggers that you have, you know, now just think about, you can utilize all those, but you could inject some AI to help do whatever you're trying to do. And you really, it really starts to open the door to a lot of different possibilities. But we're going to be boring for this example today, and we're just going to do a simple reoccurrence um, because there's really I don't need it to run multiple times a day or when certain things happen, just, daily check if there's any, with a date of today, and then send me an email. So, um, and this, I'm just going to keep the defaults. I'm not going to mess with the name right now. And then it's just signing in. So I'm going to hit next. It's going to show me some of the parameters, and I'll show you what I mean if you've never used this in Power Automate. But um, still early. Microsoft is advancing all of this very quickly. Some things are not quite where you might expect. And so, yeah, this actually pops up, but there are a few other parameters you would really need to configure this. For one, maybe what time of day you wanted it to run, if you were going to run it daily or something like that, or when you wanted it to start, if you wanted to start end date or start and end time each day. So there are other settings on this that just for whatever reason aren't surfaced here. So I'm just going to create it and skip into it. So this will just take a second. Or as it says, a few seconds, but usually pretty quick. Okay, it's added it, and it's just telling me to go ahead and test it. Before I test it, though, I do want to show you just to kind of prove this point that I've been making about the similarities to Power Automate. You'll see when I click into it, it actually does open Power Automate with the same trigger that you would add there, and then I see, more of the normal stuff that I can configure. So if you go into it, and when you're creating it, you don't see everything you're looking for, just create it and save it, and then jump in and edit it after the fact is kind of what I've found. Okay, so with that, let's we'll clear out all of our history here, just so we're starting fresh now, because at this point now I have what should be an autonomous agent that could, I haven't set, obviously I haven't set the schedule on it. But after I did, I have an agent now that will run, again, not whenever it wants, not go rogue, but it will run when I tell it to. And so let's see what it can do. So there's this little beaker over here. So I'm going to hit test trigger and hit start, and we'll see if it does anything. And it's thinking, and well, we're back to knowledge sources. And what did it find this time? Content, yeah. So we're missing one very critical piece that I skipped over at the beginning, and I did intentionally so I could kind of, again, show you this. So right now, again, it just kind of did some general knowledge, what it knows answer, and it has no idea what to do because I haven't given it any instructions whatsoever. So there is no prompt now, right? So it's just running at a trigger. Again, but ours is running when I tell it or on an interval. It could be, when a record's posted or created. but it needs to have instruction and know what to do. And this is really the heart, the brain, however you want to look at it, of it. Um, and this is really the critical piece, and where you will likely spend the most time trying to get your agent to do what you want it to do. So I'm not going to type it all up. I've got my instructions that I've worked through in my testing. So I just copied that and pasted it in here. I'm going to hit save just so it's a little easier to read. And so what you'll see here, so I've got very specific instructions. Again, I keep saying that, but you have to be very specific. And back to that kind of prompt agent that I showed you back over here in exploring agents. Again, Copilot is pretty good at telling you how to word things for itself, so it knows what you're talking about. And so I went through many iterations of this. And then ultimately, after I pasted it into M365 Copilot and asked it to rewrite it for me, I got the most predictable and results. So what does it do? So daily tasks, you are going to retrieve the billing contract. So I'm being very specific and telling it use the get billing contracts action, to find all billing contracts. Again, that's this down here. Then identify all the billing contracts that require notification. So all the contracts that have next invoice date of today. Again, being very specific. In some of my testing, I found that it would send me contracts from 3 years ago or in 2 weeks or whatever. It wasn't aligning today with the dates for whatever reason. So, working through making sure it was in the same format and being very specific seemed to solve that issue. And then finally telling it to send me an email. So here, unlike the other email, I didn't really tell it how to format it. So here I'm going a little bit further. I'm actually telling it to send it to my email address for this demo account, and then kind of being specific about what I want to include, what information, and to make it a well formatted email. So you can go much further with this. Um, this is where I've left it, and just to help show you how it can send you different things. So okay, so now it knows what to do. So let's clear this again, and let's go and actually um, test this trigger and see if now it can do anything. So it's getting our billing contracts. Should be searching through those, determining if any of them have an invoice date of today. It then, as we told it, it must have found two. It called our send email twice here, and now it's complete. So let's head back over to Outlook and see. So here there's from before, and we'll see we have two new emails. Little nicer looking emails than what we had the first one, but it sent me those two in an email. So that's kind of the whole thing through now. So what I do want to mention here, and I'll show you kind of the proof of it. So this is actually not really a great example to build an agent out of, because it's something I could do today. I could build this purely with Power Automate. There's no magic about finding contracts and determining if today's date equals today. That's something I can do very easily. Again, if kind of classic programming, if you will, I could write a mod in Business Central to do it. I could easily have done the same thing in Power Automate without any generative AI action whatsoever. I could have just specifically told it, at this time, put a recurrence in there. I could get my billing contracts, filter them down to today's date, and then for each of them, loop through and send an email. So, but the reason I stuck with this example is because I kind of learned this lesson as I went through it, in that the way that AI works is you're not going to get the same output all the time based on the same inputs. So, or I should say, the same inputs aren't always going to result in the same output, which is totally backwards to me as a developer who's used to, deterministic programming where it's going to do the same thing every single time. So AI is not that way. It's non-deterministic. So same inputs may yield different outputs. So again, that's why you need to keep the focus of these narrow, be very specific, and work through it. And it just also reiterates an important point that I haven't mentioned is you want a human still involved. It's a co-pilot. It's not pilot. It's not captain. And so if you had something like this, if I had an email sending to a customer, I would certainly want to have somebody review that before, or at least until I was absolutely certain and trusted that it was going to send the emails that I wanted them to. So it is important to test and to depending on what it's doing, to have that review in there. And so actually an example of one that we have that we're actually running live now here at Innovia um, is one that reviews tickets as they come in, our support tickets as they come in, reviews that initial email, and then helps determine the urgency. And if it feels that if the customer is anyway frustrated, if there's if it's obviously if it's urgent, if they're um, system down, something like that, of course, if they feel like they've been waiting or anything like that, it simply creates an escalation to somebody who then reviews it. They either approve and reject it. If they approve it, then it kind of sets the alarm off at the fire station, if you will, and alerts the rescue team. And so that's actually a much better example of an agent because that's something that would be very difficult to build with classic programming or with Power Automate, to have something that could, interpret an email and, tell you the sentiment of it or the urgency, or for example. But I did it this way because I wanted to show you that. And I think it's an important thing to think about. And as you start to identify use cases for this, you're going to find a lot of things that you're going to, well, I don't need AI to do that, but maybe I should still do it. So I think the lines, as I've showed, the lines do kind of blur between Power Automate and this. And I think that as you look for solutions or for opportunities for agents to be solutions, you're going to find, a lot of things that are just low-hanging fruit that, oh, I should just automate this process and Power Automate. And so just to show you quick about really what all I've been talking about is if I just turn around and run this again, it is most likely that it's going to do what I told it to do, right? So it went and got the contracts, it sent my two emails again. We hop over to Outlook. We're going to see they're different, right? So right away you can see here. So this one looks a lot nicer. It's bolded. We got some bullet points there. For whatever reason here, it decided not to do that. The first sentence changed, sign off changed. So again, these are all things that can be tuned by tuning those instructions. But I just wanted to show you again that you're not, it's not like programming. X plus Y isn't always going to equal Z. You're going to have different things, but that doesn't also mean that it's not valuable. I mean, there's a lot of things that it could do, like my support example, that again would be very difficult to do kind of a classic way, if you will. So, all right. So with that, I am going to bring us home back to my PowerPoint and wrap us up. If you were at the customer conference, you probably heard me say 4 or 5 times I could have talked all day about this. And today is no different. So it's just trying to give you an overview. You're certainly not going to walk out of this being an expert. I'm not even going to claim to be an expert, but the point is simply to get the interest going, to think about it. This is moving very fast. As you can see by the date here, we're 3 months. I think I did mine on the 23rd, but our customer conference started 3 months ago. And when I went through my demo again here, there were changes. If you sat in the demo at the customer conference, you would have heard me say that from when I prepared the night before to when I went through it again in the morning, Microsoft had done an update and something small had changed. Now, they're not bad changes, they're just improving it so fast and adding or increasing what it can do. So hopefully, from this example, you can, think within your four walls of opportunities for this and start looking at it, right? It's still early, but I think early adoption is critical in this AI landscape. It helps you get started. Trust is a big thing, building trust in it. I mean, I think, if you read anything about AI, there's a big piece of that. What is it capable of? What can it do? Start playing with it. Start seeing what it can do. I think that you're going to be surprised. Sometimes you're going to pull your hair out, but other times you're going to be surprised. And I mean, isn't that what technology and adopting new things is really all about? So with that, I thank you for your time. I will open it to questions. Joy, I don't know if any have come in. I apologize. I would much prefer this to be an interactive discussion, but that it's obviously very tough in a webinar. But if you would love to have an interactive discussion on this sometime, I'll bring up my contact information. You can always reach out to me, or we will catch you next time at our customer conference.
As Chad mentioned, he has his contact info there, so please reach out to him if you do have any questions that come up. And as I mentioned earlier, we will send out the recording. So, if you watch it back and you have questions there, please reach out. If you are interested in reading blogs, case studies, watching on-demand webinars, and more, please head to our resources page. Thank you again for joining us today, and we hope to see you at a future Innovia webinar.